Or has the Gore Drinker buff brought back champions who have been broken all season? Is our Carly back to being Giga busted? Have the Kha'Zix nerfs put the cockroach in the dirt? All questions will be answered in this video, in which the Jizz is going to brief you all on the 12 champions whose win rates have changed the most since the inception of patch 11.22. And by the way, this is the final patch of season 11, thank God. So that means the preseason for season 12 is fast approaching, and we have so much content lined up, so make sure you don't miss it by subscribing to our channel. Now let's get into the video, and 11 of the 12 champions we are about to reveal. Their win rates have gone up in the last couple of days, and the first champion who has benefited with his win rate increasing by close to 1% is Varus, and thankfully his E is now going to do more damage than his auto attacks in the early game. But it's not like Varus is sitting on a 55% win rate because of this. He is still one of the worst AD carries, in particular for solo queue, just because he is so killable. Without your flash, it's impossible to escape anything, so your positioning has to be so pinpoint, one misstep, you're going to hit the deck. Which is still why in higher elos, his win rate is one of the worst out of all the AD carries, and in Korean high elo, his win rate this patch is just 35%. So this E buff, it's now scaling more of your bonus AD, but it really hasn't done that much. Overall, yes, his win rate has improved, but if you really want to give yourself a chance of winning as an AD carry this patch, the Jizz would advise you to pick pretty much any other AD carry on the Rift. Now, one kind of AD carry who's actually one of the strongest in the game is a ranged top laner who until a few patches ago was actually the best champion in the game, and this is Quinn. Now, the reason Quinn's win rate has improved by around 1% just like Varus this patch is because of the top lane Gore Drinker has been buffed. So Gore Drinker champions, if you think of Riven, Fiora, Renekton, these champions are getting picked more. And who does Quinn do really well against? All of these bruisers and fighters, right? So these melee AD champions in the top lane, and the reason you dumpster them is because you're a ranged champion so you can perma harass them, but also because of your E, your Vault. It is impossible for these champions to stick to you and therefore to actually trade with you and outduel you. Even though from a couple of patches ago your W's attack speed at rank 5 is down, it's just the fact that Quinn is a ranged champion with an ability that pretty much cucks every melee champion in the top lane. So until Quinn's Vault is nerfed, I would highly recommend picking her, especially if the enemy team picks one of these short range champions in the top lane. Now speaking of one of those short range champions, Fiora, from being one of the premier top laners and champs on the Rift, had become a much weaker champion until 11.22 hit, and this of course is because of the Gore Drinker buff. So you're getting more HP and a bit more Omnivamp, which is certainly nice. It makes the spike a little bit better, and this has seen Fiora's win rate also improve by around 1%. So the more HP makes you harder to kill, and also makes the Gore Drinker active heal you for more, and the Omnivamp, though it really comes into play later in a game, in most elos you are going to reach the late game, and this Omnivamp is going to be really impactful, so it makes it extremely hard to 1v1 you. After all, you are the ground duelist. But what's interesting at the moment, guys, for Fiora is that some players in Korean high elo are going Divine Sundra instead of Gore Drinker because Divine Sundra is just straight out broken and by far the best fighter mythic. The Spellblade passive with the Shin should be easy to proc because auto attacks are a big part of your kit, and what's also really useful and a bit underrated is the fact that it gives you magic penetration and armor penetration. And magic penetration on Fiora, you might be like, why on earth would this be useful? Well, your W actually benefits from this because it's dealing magic damage. The Divine Sundra might look kind of useless on Fiora, but when we dive into it, it actually makes sense. And because Gore Drinker is still nowhere near as good as it was, I would certainly recommend trying Divine Sundra Fiora out. Now, the next champion who's benefited in the win rate department, this is Kalista. So 2 AD carries so far. This is nice because AD carries all season long, well, they haven't been the best class, so Kalista improving is certainly a feels good moment. But even though there are some Kalista mains out there who are really happy about this buff, it really hasn't changed that much, with Kalista's win rate only improving by 1%, and a bit like Varus, Kalista's win rate was so bad before 11.22, this has just made it a little bit better. For sure, the buff on its own is nice. Your spears are doing more damage, all of them as well, not just your first one, but a bit like Varus, guys, in recent times, Kalista has been nerfed, so her core problems still exist. Her ultimate's knockup duration only lasting 1 second at level 6. This is really short for an ultimate CC. If you compare this to a Rel or a Leona ultimate, it's really nothing, and it doesn't really do much to help you to stay alive. If you think of other AD carries, they have damage in their ultimate like a Jinx Rocket, or they might have some sort of self-peel like a Xayah. So for sure, you can pick Kalista this patch, and I'd really recommend picking her when you have a hard engaged support. But even still, guys, there is just so much in the game that will coke your movement speed and your passive, which is really what you're about, and you still don't have the DPS that other strong AD carries have, like Draven and Tristana, 2 other Halo Blades users. So despite the buff, we still have to be realistic. The Kalista just is not a great AD carry. Now, one champion who is doing a lot better than Kalista, I mean, overall still not the best win rate, but Kled, thanks to the Gore Drinker buff, has had a bit of a mini revival, with his win rate increasing by 1%, and it's now around 50-51% overall. So this is nothing to scoff at, but guys, here's the thing. Lots of Kled mains, because Gore Drinker is nowhere near as good as it was, are actually building Sunfire Ages. So a bit like Fiora, these cheeky mains are trying to find mythics substitutes. And the funny thing is, Sunfire Aegis as Kledd's mythic actually does better than Gore Drinker. It gives you the same amount of ability Ace, and even though you're sacrificing a bit of DPS and sustain, it's just making you way tankier, so you won't get to that low HP anyway. And it's also really good for the 1v1 as well, because as Kled, stacking Immolate's passive should be very easy, so you're always going to get to max stacks. And this mythic works so well, guys, with Titanic Hydra. So by rushing Titanic and getting access to the bonus HP, which converts into bonus AD, and then stacking on top of this with Sunfire Aegis, then Steris Gauge, these three items, if you can get to it, have an 80% win rate in Master and above for Kled mains. So if you can get to that spike, guys, you give yourself as good a chance as anyone on the Rift to win that game. So don't be fooled by the Gore Drinker buff. For sure, it's a little better from 1121, but Sunfire Aegis is the standout mythic item to choose for Kled, so make sure you do so. This next top laner, whose win rate has improved by over 1% in just the last couple of days, this champion is still building Gore Drinker, so there's no Divine Sunder alternative or Sunfire Aegis alternative, and this of course is Riven, who even got buffs herself. And I said in an earlier video, she's bad for just one patch, so Riot buff her, and her win rate is back to around 50% overall, and in high reloads it's still really good, sitting around 51-52%. Now the Gore Drinker buff would definitely have something to do with this, more HP, more Omnivamp. We've been through this already, but for Riven, your E is scaling more of your bonus AD now, so in the late game, once you get to like at least 3 items, your shield is going to be huge, and you're going to be unkillable. And also your key burst, so your W, the stun, the base damage is higher, which is giving you a stronger laning phase. So what I'm basically saying is, yeah, have fun playing against Riven again for another patch. Now one champion who wasn't as fortunate as Riven this patch, who is a Gore Drinker user, this is Olaf, whose win rate has improved by over 1% just like Riven's. I say unfortunate in the sense that Olaf has been much worse than Riven, but he doesn't get any direct buffs. So this patch he's only benefiting from the Gore Drinker buff, but if you think about it, on a champion like Olaf, this really makes sense, because you're getting more HP now. If you do get lower, you will regain more HP from the active, and this works really well with Olaf. When you do start losing a lot of your health, you're getting more attack speed, and when the extra Omnivamp kicks in from Gore Drinker, you go from being on the brink of death to full HP real quick, and everyone in that game starts missing pinging because they cannot believe what they're witnessing. Now I still think Olaf shouldn't really be picked unless the enemy team has CC, so if the enemy mid laner is a Twisted Fate, for example, Olaf can ruin his day. Or maybe the enemy team has a hard engaged support like a Rel. Just pick Olaf and you really negate her threat. But what about if the enemy champions have a lot of peel and spellcasters? Well then Olaf probably isn't going to be the best champion, because by the time you reach the enemy backline, you are dead, and even though Gore Drinker is better, you won't have the durability to survive that initial burst, and you won't have the sustain to get back to full HP and stay there for long enough. So do be careful about those champ selects when you do select Olaf. Make sure the enemy team composition is fit for the Viking. Now I'm excited about this next champion, guys, because Akali's win rate has improved by over 1%, and we haven't really mentioned Akali as being one of the premier champs in mid and top lane, but now hopefully she will be back on the menu, and that's because her passive's damage, the base damage is up, and also the AP scaling, so it's giving you more in the laning phase and also out of the laning phase. So getting your passive certainly means a lot more, and just like some of the other champions on this list, I would really pick Akali if you know you can actually use your passive against the enemy mid or top laner. If they're a ranged champion, you're probably not going to be able to auto attack them as much, right? So getting your passive doesn't really mean anything. You're not going to make use of the buff. But if they pick a Yasuo, a Zed in the mid lane, or if they pick a melee fighter in the top lane, if you pick Akali, you are just going to pop off. And we already know how many people complain about Akali already just because her kit, it's super annoying and counter-interactive. So if she is open, guys, and if the enemy team is very short range and you know you can proc your passive and actually use it, make sure you lock her in for 1122. Now next up, guys, on the win rates, we have another champion who is benefiting from the Gore Drinker buff, and this is Kayn, with his win rate improving by over 1%, but Kayn is also benefiting, the RAS version that is, from some direct buff. So your Q's damage ratio, this is improved, and you're also going to deal more damage to targets with more HP. So really this patch was all about Red Kayn, with Gore Drinker, Black Cleaver, Steris Gauge. This build is back on the map, but the issue for Kayn still remains that there are some other champions out there who are probably just stronger in the bruiser category, and we are about to reveal one of these very soon. So not every game you're going to stomp just because there might be a better champion out there, but thankfully you can actually play Red Kayn out. Now as far as Blue Kayn goes, the Shadow Assassin, going Gore Drinker really isn't worth anymore just because of the nerfs a couple of patches ago, and the buff that came in this patch does nothing for assassins. So if you are going to go Blue Kayn, it's probably best to go Ghostblade into Prowler's Claw, which is still good to build, don't get me wrong, but I'll only go this if the enemy team has like 5 squishy champions. If not, if they have a couple of tanks and maybe a couple of bruisers, going Red Kayn is definitely going to give you the best results. But a champion that's going to give you even better results in 1122 is another jungler, and this is Vi. Now Vi, funnily enough, actually got hotfix nerf yesterday. So what Riot did, they reduced your base armor per level, they reduced your base AD per level, and they reduced your ultimate stun duration duration by 0.1 seconds. Now the armor and AD going down per level is kind of annoying, so in the mid to late game in particular, you're going to take a little more damage and deal a little less damage, but your ultimate stun duration not lasting as long might mean you can't combo with your R and Q as much. But still guys, Vi's win rate this patch, because there were so many quality of life changes, has improved by close to 1.5%. So basically what you see on your screen now, your Q and your ultimate just feel better to use, so there's a bit more reliability and consistency. And by the way, despite these mini nerfs that came in yesterday, Vi's win rate in lower elos is close to 55%. Now in higher elos it changes because yeah, people actually know how to kite, but in lower elos guys, if you pick Vi and you build a Divine Sunder and you have Halo Blades as your keystone, dear me, it is curtains for the enemy team. So it's a great time to play Vi, and right, I've probably done this so you're all happy when Arcane comes out. Now the 11th champion of the 12 guys whose win rate has improved, this is Renekton, and his win rate has improved by a whopping 2.5%, and this will only increase as the patch continues. So the fact that his empowered W is now stunning enemy champions for 1.5 seconds again, this was only 1 second for like 2 patches in a row, and his win rate was like the lowest out of all the top laners. I mean, it's still pretty trash, it's around 46-47% still, but with the Gore Drinker buff as well, this does actually mean you can pick Renekton and maybe win. The Croc is not an insta loss. And there's one more champion we have to talk about guys for this patch who actually got nerfed in 11.22. And even though these nerfs looked really big, it's just the fact that Kha'Zix was so broken in the first place, his win rate hasn't gone down by that much, so only by 1%, and it's still sitting around 51-52%. So if you were playing the bug beforehand, there is no reason to stop playing him. So your Q's damage ratio was reduced in terms of its scaling off your bonus AD, both in the isolated form and the other form, but like I said, you were doing so much damage anyway that you were still doing enough to one-shot the squishies on the enemy team, and this is really important to understand guys. Know who your targets are before the fight starts, and you will not feel this nerf at all. Those squishy enemy champions with no armor are still going to get blown to bits, so make sure you play the flanks of those fights, get around the back of them, and the enemy backline will go bang. So those are the 12 champions guys affected most in terms of win rate by the 11.22 changes. If you did enjoy the video, please make sure to leave a like down below, and also make sure on your way out to check out the GameLeap website linked in the description and comment section. We upload up to 20 challenger tier videos a week, so to get access to that content, make sure you sign up. And until tomorrow's daily upload, this has been the Jizz. Bye.